Live from Fargo and serving you on TV, online, and on the go, this is Valley News Live at 5.
We begin with breaking news. Officials with UND are now announcing a surge of COVID-19 cases on campus. Earlier this week, the university reported 29 student athletes had also tested positive for COVID. Valley News Team's Courtney Lockey joins us live now from Grand Forks with more on this story. Courtney, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Andrea, COVID-19 cases seem to be quickly on the rise here at UND. You just mentioned those 29 student athletes, and the university coming out today saying now that 6 of their Greek chapters on campus have a person who lives inside the facility that has tested positive for coronavirus. Now, by now, we all know the rules, and anyone living within that facility is considered a close contact, and they're going to have to quarantine for 14 days and follow those CDC guidelines. Now, university officials are working closely with fraternity and sorority members to check in on those who are impacted. Now, this is exactly why the president says they have been so aggressive with their testing, saying that they want to identify those who have tested positive for the virus and all of their close contacts. Now,
All right, we apologize we lost her, but that's sometimes what happens with technology. Stick with Valley News Live as we continue to learn more on this story. Today, the 3 candidates for Fargo Police Chief were on the hot seat during rounds of interviews. This is the first time they've spoken to the public. Valley News Team's Joshua Pagero was listening in throughout the day, and he joins us live now in front of City Hall. Joshua?
Expected to hear who the selection committee is going to recommend for police chief any minute now. They're currently meeting. Last we heard from the city spokesman, in less than 5 minutes we'll know who they're going to pick as a recommendation for police chief, and then that will then go before city commission. But I want to introduce you. There are about 3 candidates. One of them is John Franklin, Stacy Kelly, and David Sobolski. They each introduced themselves. They were able to ask questions from the selection committee, and I even got to participate in a mock interview. But I'm going to give you a few sound bites about what they plan to bring to the department if they're chosen to be the next chief.
We also track when we've had to use force and whether or not the person had a mental health issue or a drug and alcohol issue, because we know that there's a difference between those folks.
Like I said, a time of crisis is not when you want to make policy. Well, a time of crisis is not when you want to work on community relations. That needs to be built every day. Every hour that you're out.
And I hope that if there are more marches planned here in Fargo, whoever your next chief is will work very hard to establish good communication to and from with the various protest groups.
Again, as you heard there, that was Sobolski, Kelly, and Franklin. One of those 3 is going to be recommended by this selection committee, which is made up from members of the community as well as the mayor and a city commissioner, to see who they're going to recommend to be the next chief, and that will then go before a city commission vote. We're going to stand here and wait until the next chief is announced and bring that for you as breaking news. Reporting live in front of City Hall, Joshua Pagero, Valley News Live.
All right. Thank you, Joshua, for that live report. Questions and comments from the public were not taken at today's Fargo Police Chief interviews, leaving many watching from the sidelines, hoping city leaders and members of the media would ask the right questions. Valley News Team's crime and safety reporter, Bailey Hurley, talked with people in the community on what they hope the new police chief brings to Fargo.
Although the selection process for Fargo Police Chief candidates is over, many in the community say they're still upset someone from within the department or the state wasn't placed in the running. However, for Anna Lynch, she says she thinks an outsider is exactly what the city needs to be better.
I mean, it's obviously not working completely. We know there are problems, we know there are issues, and it's, an outside perspective can help with that. An outside perspective is going to give us somebody who can come in and say, well, you keep having this problem, and I think it might be starting from this. How about we change that?
Lynch says on top of bettering relationships with minorities in the community, she says she thinks mental health help needs to be on the top of the list for the new police chief.
They can take them somewhere for treatment, or they can take them to jail, or they can leave them, and those are the only options.
Meanwhile, Landon Sabo says he's just hoping for an honest man who's transparent with the community and holds his officers to the highest standard.
Cops need to be held responsible, someone who does the right thing when no one's looking, someone who's a leader.
Many community members say they think it's important for the next police chief to have experience dealing with violent crimes and offenders. But Lynch says most of all, she hopes whoever is Fargo's next leader is someone who puts the community first.
Really going to listen to the community, is going to be transparent, is going to, when there's issues, listen to the community input.
In Fargo, Bailey Hurley, Valley News Live.
Officials say a decision is expected tomorrow. Once again, overnight storms brought dangerous winds to some of our counties. Right here, you see what was happening on the radar earlier. Our team was here covering it for you all night long. So let's check out this evening's First Alert forecast to see what's going on. Hey, Hutch.
It is much quieter as we head into our evening for now after some measurements of 80-mile-per-hour winds in Donaldson. They're very interesting cloud structure from these storms as they collapsed. This was near Cummings, and it stopped David's operations there as he wanted to do some flying that morning. Cloud was kicked out. Well, that's called a roll cloud. Here's another view of it on the bottom of the screen. So if you saw one of those cigar-shaped clouds rolling through this morning, it was from the storms way up by the international border. Quiet for now, a few sprinkles off near Wadena. Look at the heat again out in the central Dakotas. 90s there, 80s for the rest of us. Your forecast for Fargo will keep us in the 80s. I cannot rule out an isolated thunder shower, but it's not going to be widespread. They're going to be hit and miss once again late tonight. So we'll detail that, Andrea, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Friday, which does bring a more widespread chance of thunderstorms. Your forecast in a few moments.
All right, thanks, Hutch. 2 people are facing multiple charges after a domestic dispute in Jamestown. Around 10 last night, police were sent to an alley to check out gunshots being fired. The person who called police said a female made threats to kill a man and then someone fired a gun. Officers arrested 33-year-old Jeremy Mark and 32-year-old Crystal Berglund. Police also searched a vehicle on scene, finding a gun, ammunition, a spent shell casing, and a metal blunt object used in the fight. We now know the name of the man who died in a lawnmower accident. He's identified as 35-year-old Brandon Posh of rural Hawley, Minnesota. The accident happened Tuesday. Emergency crews found Posh lying in a ditch with a lawnmower on top of him. A residential fire in the Northern Valley is now being ruled accidental. Officials in Grand Forks say the fire was caused when someone didn't put out a cigarette properly. The cigarette ignited combustible mulch, which then started the vinyl siding on the house on fire. The fire traveled up the side of the house into the attic space, and a strong wind helped spread the flames. It's unclear when Americans can return to life as normal without a coronavirus vaccine and cure. The search is costing taxpayers billions, and the head of the Food and Drug Administration tells our Washington bureau's Peter Zampa he can't promise results anytime soon.
The fastest researchers have ever developed a vaccine, 4 years. But FDA Chief Stephen Hahn tells us we could be on the brink of history with a COVID-19 vaccine.
That's not because anyone has cut any corners. It's because it's taken a concerted effort. And we haven't done things in sequence. We've done things in parallel.
Taxpayer dollars are funding 7 private trials. The farthest along, projects from Moderna and Pfizer, whose vaccines have already been injected in human test subjects.
Now, of course, the president has said he would like to see a vaccine around the beginning of November, and he also noted it might help his re-election chances if a vaccine is approved by then. Is there any political pressure on you to quickly sign off on a vaccine?
The only facts FDA will look at with respect to a vaccine when the data come to us is those data and the science and the medicine.
So there's no real pressure from the president to get this done by November?
I've had absolutely no pressure from anyone.
Until a vaccine is available, the FDA is trying to fast-track treatments. In June, the agency had to revoke its approval of the drug hydroxychloroquine when studies found it to be ineffective and potentially dangerous. Now there are calls to deploy an unproven toxic plant extract.
We'll look at it. We're looking at a lot of different things.
Has the president spoken to you about oleandrin?
I'm not going to comment on my private conversations with anyone regarding this subject, but what I can tell you is that the only considerations we're going to use, Peter, are science and data.
Remdesivir is one medication still approved by the FDA as they test other potential remedies. In Washington, I'm Peter Zampa.
The latest numbers show more than 173,000 Americans have died from the coronavirus. The World Health Organization is warning today that even a vaccine will not be the end of the pandemic. The warning came from the organization's regional director for Europe. Over 3.3 million cases and more than 205,000 COVID-19 deaths have been recorded in Europe. Fears of a second wave are rising with new infections in Spain and France. The regional director is urging people to prepare to live with the COVID-19 virus and not rely on a vaccine to end the threat.
Even a vaccine will not be the end of the pandemic. The end of the pandemic will be the day when every one of us will take the responsibility and have been learning how to behave with the virus.
The European Commission agreed to buy at least 300 million doses of a potential COVID-19 vaccine, which could weaken plans for a global approach led by the World Health Organization. Let's take a look at the COVID-19 numbers in our area. In Minnesota, the Department of Health is reporting another 698 confirmed cases of COVID-19, along with 7 new deaths linked to the illness. 1,745 deaths have been attributed to the disease, and over 60,000 people are listed as recovered. In North Dakota, there are 274 new cases in the state. The death toll remains at 130, and the active case count is up to 1,394. The Hotel Donaldson is temporarily closing its lounge, hotel, and restaurant, according to a Facebook post. The downtown Fargo business did not state when it will reopen, but in that post, the Hodo said an employee tested positive for COVID-19, prompting them to temporarily close down. The wildfires in California are now doubling in size, burning hundreds of thousands of acres, plus buildings and homes. The latest on that is still ahead.
A few of us started the day with clouds and some showers, remnants of thunderstorms during the overnight hours. It's been a pretty hot one once again out to the west, Carrington, 90 sizzling degrees. The heat continues and storms increase. Your forecast is next.